Hey, welcome! Thanks for tuning in. This is There's Something About Archviz, a podcast where I discuss with experts and industry leaders about the many sides of the Archviz industry. I'm your host, Federico Biancullo. I'm an Archviz artist, founder of The Big Picture, blogger, and content creator in the field of architectural representation. I'm on a journey to learn more on all things about Archviz, art direction, business, technology, you name it. And I would like you to be a part of this journey as well. Through these conversations, my hope is to bring light to not so obvious topics connected to our industry and help you grow as a professional, as an artist, and why not, as a human being as well. So please join me. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of There's Something About Archviz. So, here we are, ready for another round. Welcome to Season 2 of There's Something About Archviz. You know, writing the intro bit for this new season took me much longer than I expected. I felt long and hard where and how to talk about what's going on in the world right now. And to be honest, I'm still debating. After all I do is running a podcast. I'm trying to entertain and educate people. So, what's my responsibility as a content creator towards the Archviz community? And to be honest, I thought that the best thing that I can do now is just keep doing what I was doing before. So finding interesting topics, bringing them to the podcast and stick to this. So at least I try to distract you and myself as well from the news, from what's going on, and from the uncertainty of days coming. Of course, my thoughts are all the time with all people who are suffering due to this conflict. And that said, there's plenty of people in our small community who are actually trying to give a concrete aid, and I strongly encourage you to check them out and join the effort if you can, as they're very active with various acts of support. But let's move on. This season starts with another topic that it's very dear to me. As some of you may already know, before starting my journey in Archviz as a solo studio, I spent some time working as an in-house Archviz artist for the Dutch firm Meccano. And despite the fact that in-house Archviz artists are a huge part of our industry, they don't often get the recognition they deserve. In-house Archviz artists work closely with architects. It's basically like having your clients in the same room as you. So the kind of filters and barriers that Archviz firms put in place are 100 times more difficult to raise. Expectations in architecture offices are very high. In-house artists get a lot of pressure upon their shoulders, but in most cases they don't have the possibility to work at the pace or with the conditions that Archviz firms would enforce. I discussed this and much more with Francisco Tirado, visual manager at Copenaghen-based firm COBE. Our talk was extremely insightful. Fran has a lot of experience not only in working in-house, but also as a freelancer and as an employee of a world-renowned Archviz studio like Pixelflakes. All of experience and his love for the design process made him the ideal professional to cover the role of in-house artist, which is something that nowadays I wouldn't really recommend to newcomers in the industry. In this episode, we discuss his background, how he wins the trust of the design team when doing images, and how he manages their expectations. And we also discussed how to detach yourself emotionally from the work that you do in order to keep your mental health in such a fast-paced work environment. I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode a lot, so I'll leave you to it. Here's my conversation with Fran. You were saying that you are based in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And how long have you been there?
I have been in Copenhagen. In September, I will do 4 years. I came directly to work at COBE. I was working before as a freelance in Lithuania. And I just decided that my freelance time was kind of over. And I wanted to join to a company. And it's not like I was looking for a job, because by the time I was working by myself and I was doing really well. I had my small home studio, and I was doing images for international offices. So I was doing well, but in the last year, I got involved in a project in Saudi Arabia. I was working with an engineering company, and they needed the images plus art direction on the project, because it's an engineering company. Of course, they have architects, but they were at the very beginning of a process, and the way they work is kind of rigid. So until they have a design that they can visualize and show to a client, it's a long process. But they needed something fast. And I think visual artists, we kind of click in that role perfectly because we can come up with ideas and just kind of put them into an image. And then they can use those images into meetings or trying to pitch the project or like for a lot of purpose. And it's not like a technical drawing. It's mostly a feeling. So I got involved in that project and then I realized, okay, this is something else that what I did before. I wasn't getting a 3D and doing the images. I was involved into the design. Then was when I thought, okay, so actually I might be good if I work in-house. And then COBE, just by coincidence, I saw this job offer of COBE into Ronen Beckerman website, and I applied. And they told me that no, they actually declined my yes. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I continued working, but a few months later, I received a call from Denmark, and they say that they were again interested in my portfolio, and they asked me if I could go to Copenhagen to have an interview. So actually, by the time, it was funny because they told me no. And I got really busy. I got a lot of projects to do. So I was like, okay, whatever. They told me no, but actually I'm super busy. So it's not a big deal.
I wonder why they told you no at the time. They were looking for somebody, of course, clearly there was a job ad up. But who was evaluating portfolios of visualizers at the moment? I think they had no internal visual artists. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Who was actually evaluating your portfolio?
It was an architect who was doing images, but he wasn't full-time doing images. He was most of the time doing images, but also working as an architect. And they needed someone to work full-time as a visual artist. They probably got someone, but I don't know, maybe didn't go well, or I don't know. So a few months later, I received this call. They flew me to Copenhagen for 3 days, and I went to the office. I like it. We got an agreement. 3 months later, I was at Copenhagen. It took me 3-4 months because actually I had to close all the projects I was doing. And that was actually kind of painful because I was doing pretty well. And I had so many projects, to say to a customer who already trusts you, I was working with them for 2 years. It was kind of sad. But also I wanted to change my life because, I was living in Lithuania, but I'm from Spain. And I was living alone, just working by myself at home. It's like working from home before Corona,
But why Lithuania, by the way? You explained to me that the taxation is quite convenient in those countries in the Baltic republics. But why Lithuania specifically? Did you have any ties there? Did you have any recommendation or any friends? Because that's quite a specific choice, I think.
Yes, I did my Erasmus in Lithuania in 2010. And then I loved the country. I totally love it. And I like it a lot. And then I came back to do my internship. And actually doing my internship in Lithuania is when I started doing images for first time ever. I started working in competitions in the office. It's an office called BAS in Vilnius. And I remember one of the architects, I couldn't do any documentation or even drawings. Had to be with text in Lithuanian that I have no clue of the language. And then was a guy, he was really good doing images. And he kind of told me, Fran, do you want to do the images for our project? I said, of course. And then I just started. I did those images. It was kind of fun. And then I came back to Spain. But in the moment I graduated, I came back to Lithuania and I started working in that office again as a visual artist. Full time. It was kind of like I had to go to that country because also this was in 2013. Back then in Spain, the economical crisis was still like on the peak. It was no jobs for architects, and basically I had nothing to do, and I had nothing to lose neither. So why not? So I went to Lithuania and I started over there.
And you were well off as a freelancer, you were saying to me. You had a lot of projects. How did you build your network where you were there?
It was, when I moved to Lithuania, before I worked to this office actually, I was looking for a job. I needed anything, I was desperate. I needed a job. So I started working as a phone operator in a company, and I was working at night, calling to customers in the US because I speak Spanish. So I was just dealing with Spanish speakers in the US. But during the daytime, I started sending my portfolio to small offices in Vilnius. And some of them, they offered to me to pay me to do the images for them. So I say, why not? So in Lithuania, to become a freelancer is quite easy. You basically have to go to the tax office and sign a document, and that's it. You are a freelancer. So I did that, and I quit my job in the call center, and I started doing images. And then I put an advert in a website in Lithuania, and small offices from Lithuania, they started to call me, and I was getting one project here, one project there. And I believe the world just ran, Vilnius is a very small city. And so most of the architects know each other. And I continued doing the images. And then I created a website. It's a website that I still have nowadays, but I just created in 2014. And I started putting images slowly. I built this customer base, and it worked really well, to the point where the office where I worked in Lithuania, they actually wanted to hire me as a full-time. And I stayed there for 1 year, almost 2 years. And I was learning a lot. And it's when I started doing competitions and doing visualizations for big projects. And then I got hired by Pixelflakes in London. And I think this is the turning point, It's like suddenly I got to a place where, the projects I was doing in Lithuania, they were quite good. I was doing schools, public buildings. But, when I got to Pixelflakes, it was a different scale. So it was like huge projects with a lot of responsibility. And also in the office where I was in Lithuania, I was alone. And then I went to this office and we were like 10 artists. The change is dramatic because you are from being alone and don't having nobody who to ask anything, suddenly you have 10 seniors around you. It was amazing. The art director of Pixelflakes, Matthew Reid, the guy was a machine. I was like, this guy is so good. And I was like, every day learning so much that I was going home shocked. Every single day, the learning was huge.
It's quite unique what you said to me. You've basically seen it all. You've seen the profession from all sides. You've been a freelancer and a quite successful one as well. You work for one of the most renowned Archviz offices in the world, and now you're working as an in-house artist, as a visual manager for COBE. So you are at the moment an in-house visual artist. So you've basically seen the industry from all perspectives. My initial question to you was to ask you what's the difference between being a freelancer and being an in-house artist. But I will also ask you to make a difference between being a freelancer as an in-house artist and also as an artist for a company like Pixelflakes.
I would say the freelance time was divided in two. Was the first time I started as a freelancer from zero without knowledge of anything. And then I had my second time as a freelancer after Pixelflakes. So in London, I learned so much. But London wasn't for me. It's a huge city, and I need to live in a city kind of relax. So just for my personal taste. So I quit and I moved to Lithuania again, and I started to freelancing again. But this time was very different. I already did a year of freelancing, almost 2 years in-house visual artist. Also I think it was 6 months in a visualization studio, and then freelancing again. But this time was different because I already knew a lot of people and I already worked in a lot of projects. So it wasn't like at the beginning, starting from zero. I already kind of had an idea of the market, prices, how to deal with customers. What I did is I took 4 months off. During 4 months, I didn't work. I would not say I didn't work. I didn't produce images, but I worked a lot. I actually started reading books about finance, how to deal with the customers, how to prepare contracts, how to deal with all the legal aspect of running a business. And it's complicated. It's very complicated. It's like to do good images is one thing that we kind of assume. In order to succeed as a freelancer, as a default, you have to do good images. That's it. But then it's all the business side, which is really difficult. And it takes so much time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The good images are kind of a given, especially nowadays that it is very easy with the tools that we have to produce decent images. But the difference is on the relationship that you can manage to build with your own clients, with your own network. I think it makes a world of difference, especially when you're a solo artist like you were.
Exactly. And many people, when they decide to go on their own, I'm not saying as a critic, but it's something that they don't have it clear, Like I have had conversation with friends of mine who wanted to go on his own. And I always say, it's okay, man, you as an artist, you are awesome, but dude, seriously, take it easy and read, because it's a huge effort. Then, I have been listening to your podcast, and I'm like you. I'm a kind of introvert guy, and for me, it's not easy to deal with customers and to, business people are the way they are. If you, let's say you are a good guy, you are a good artist, you love your work, but at the same time, the market is big and you don't know with who you are going to deal. You might deal with people who maybe they want to take advantage of you, or maybe they want to squeeze as much as they can from you. And to learn to deal with them take a lot of time, practice, and effort.
Also, learning how to manage the conversation with a client, that is probably the most important part. When you're an artist, you also need to manage the process of communicating your ideas and understand what the client's looking for. As artists, we are often very convinced about our idea on how an image should look like, and we lose sight on how the project should look like for the goal of the client. That's probably very difficult as a freelancer when you don't have somebody else that tells you, look, the client's looking for something else. Maybe you should go try another way for that image. But let's go back on track and let's go to your experience at COBE. You went from a state that you were a solo artist, then you joined a team of 10 artists with a lot of seniors, then you went again freelancer, and eventually you stepped into an architecture office, which is a completely different environment. I also have a background as an in-house visualization artist. I was at Meccano for about 1.5 years, I think. So I kind of understood what's going on in architecture offices when it comes to visuals. You've been there for way longer than me, of course. But what are the main differences that you saw between working at COBE's architecture office and being a freelancer? I think there's huge differences, but I think it's good to let people understand what are those differences.
When I joined COBE, I already had some experience as an in-house visual artist. So I was like, I kind of knew we were similar. Of course, the size of the company is different, but kind of similar process. And the most significant, I will say, is that you have to understand that now you are part of a team. You are in a design team and you are not a freelancer. Let's say when you are working by yourself, your only task is to make sure that the images are at its best. But when you are in a firm, you get in touch with the project way before. I know the project from the very beginning. I have seen pinups, I have seen how the design evolved. And by the time the project gets to my table, I have been already thinking about the project for a month or even more, So I have been looking at it, talking with the architects, getting wet of the project.
I think that you can also gather a lot of time to draw references from those ideas. You usually get the project at a very late stage. So probably references gathering is it's a crucial part, but a very short process. While when you're in an architecture office, probably you can start already gathering references and also getting references from the office itself.
Yes. And also sometimes you don't even have to do the work because the project team will do it for you. So they will prepare a booklet of reference of what they like and what they think the images should be. And because we have been together for a while, they know what I need. They know what kind of images do I need as a reference. And I know as well what they want to show. So after a while, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. So you will still have very tight deadlines. In an office like COBE, where we do a lot of competitions, deadlines are always tight. Because no matter what, the projects can be always better. And we cannot close a design like 3 weeks before the deadline. For sure, we have things to improve. then as a visual artist in-house, you have to deal with that. So you have to live with a work that you know is going to be tight. But because you have been doing it for a long time, it's like a sniper approach. You have one bullet, and then you just go for it. You have to trust yourself, and most of the time it works. Because, as I say, we have been doing it so many times. That's it. This is what we have. This is what we deliver. And they're happy.
Your production is also a very high quality production. I think I was looking at some of your images. I suppose they were yours. It's studio-like production. There's no differences between an image that you produce in-house from an image that any other visualization studio could have produced. I mean, really good studios, not average studios, honestly. I think this is really hard when you are working with architects. I had the impression in my short time at Meccano that the most difficult thing to achieve when you work as an in-house artist is getting the trust of the people that you're working with. Getting trust from the architects, being trusted that you can deliver the right kind of image for the project that you're on. So what was your first impression of working with architects under this aspect? Especially in the first few days. Did you ever felt that your expertise was kind of dismissed, that they were not considering carefully your ideas, not listening to you?
Yes, at the beginning, this is still a work in progress. It never ends. But for instance, when I joined COBE, they don't know me. They don't know who I am. They don't know my background. They don't know anything. The human resources of the company knows who I am, but the project manager don't have a clue. It's like, it's this guy, he's coming here to do out the images for us. We don't know how he works. And the architects at COBE, before we established our team, they have been using high-end companies of visualization. They use Mir, they use Beauty and the Beat, they use the best offices of visualization that offer the best service, and they expect from you the same. But you are alone. you are only one man, and you are sitting there, and you think, how can I compete with Mir? No, this was at the very beginning, and they expect from you to deliver the same service. And that for me was extremely hard. It's like, I don't have time. I cannot do the sketches as Mir did. I couldn't. It's like, I cannot do the same. But slowly we get to know each other. Okay, I work in a slightly different way. So this is the way we work. At the beginning, they are quite resistant. If they get used to work with a company, they want you to do the same. But you cannot do the same. You're in-house. You have to explain them. Like, listen, a company have 5, 6, 10, how many employees, and they can pull in 3 days a lot of work. I cannot do it. I have my 8 hours per day, so I have to deal with what I have. But slowly you get to work. They like what you do. They see that the images are succeed. They win a few competitions, and slowly they cannot trust your voice and what you have to say. And then the magic happens. Because when you start doing projects with them and more and more and more, and they see that you are actually doing a good work, and they like, you understand each other, you understand what they want, you understand the project, it gets to the point when sometimes, this is the dream of a visual artist. It gets to the point that sometimes we deliver the images and we have no comments. That's it. We have one round, like we deliver, and it's final. And this is like, it's a dream, you don't have to do changes.
You see, it always boils down to relationship, to how you manage the relationship with people and how good you are at understanding the people that surround you, that work with you. While you were talking, I was wondering something. What was the turning point? Do you remember any specific moment or project that the magic happened and you felt like, okay, that's it. I'm getting somewhere with these people. I'm getting to understand them and they're getting to understand me.
Yes, there is a time with a date on it. This was evolving, From the very beginning, it was evolving. And I was really happy because I could see a path, okay, this is getting better and better and better. But last year, I won the Architizer One Rendering Challenge. And somehow, this was like something in my office. And from then, they just believe what I say. So it's like when I work, they just agree. Of course, sometimes I have to do changes, all this stuff, but it's not always like that. But it kind of, you win the respect of the architects. And then everything went very easy.
So the magic happened when you won the Architizer One Rendering competition. That's quite strange. I'm quite curious that it took an external award to be recognized, to change the perspective. And any competition that you won at the office that you felt that was also a big step for you? Any competition that you can tell that is public?
At COBE, we do a lot of competitions. We are specialized into that. Most of it, we don't win it, but we do a lot of competitions and we win many as well. And, now you are touching a topic which is like sensitive, because when we do competitions, I cannot try to detach myself of the competition, because if we do competitions and I get attached to the images and to the project and we lose it, it cannot drag you down. So when I do images, I forget about the project. 100%. I don't even talk about this project anymore in my life unless we win it. Then when we win, I feel proud, but I also have this approach of, it's nice, we won it, but my target right now is the project where I'm working now. So I don't get to enjoy too much the project, and neither I think at the office doing the images for winning projects. It's not like you will win respect for people. I don't think so. I mean, of course, the staffing are happy because the work that you do is actually bringing projects to the office. But I don't think it will impact into your reputation, or it might help to some people. But we know that we do projects, we win, at the same time we can lose. That's it. It's part of the game. Otherwise, we will get crazy,
Yeah, to get too emotionally attached to your work is not very good. I mean, artistry is all about emotions, but when you work in an architecture office, you cannot get too involved in one project, especially an office like yours that is so into competitions. No, I completely understand, honestly, Fran. But going back to the trust topic, if we were to go into the specifics of getting to a point that you trust the designers and the designers trust you, is there anything that you learned on how to communicate with the teams, with the people, with the project leaders in your office?
Yes. For instance, I do a lot of drafting. Sometimes talking is not enough. I tell them it's fine, everything is okay, I'm working on the project, I'm working in this 3D. But the project managers are like, they need to see it. So the way I personally try to win the trust of a project manager is to keep them updated with what I do. Not necessarily asking feedback from them. I'm just saying, look, come to my desk. I will show you how is going the project. I have this and that. I have prepared these cameras. I think for this view, we should go for this mood or for that one because it highlights some aspect of the project. When you have this conversation with the project manager in front of the computer, showing them the progress, the draft, the super low resolution image with 5 polygons, just that, they are like satisfied. It's like, okay, good. I know that you're working hard. I know that you already have something. And we know that you know what are you doing. And then I will send them those, for example, if I do some draft, I just send them to them. By draft, I'm talking about really rough images. But they have it, and they can place it already in their panels, and they can play with it. So they have an idea that everything you talk is already materialized, or at the moment is being materialized. Then they are kind of happy, and they kind of trust you, because we have done, of course, many projects. So slowly you get to win their trust. And also, when we visual artists, we see a draft, we can see beyond, because we have done it so many times. And sometimes, if I show a draft to my sister, to my little sister, she don't see nothing. She see 5 colors. She don't understand what that shape is. And I tell her, but that's a tree. And she's like, but it doesn't look like a tree. Yeah, believe me, it's a tree. In your head, you see a tree, but she doesn't. But with the architects, at the end, architects are people who have also a spatial vision, and they can imagine things. So when they have been working with you for a while and you show them that draft, they will have the same vision as you have. So they will be able to see the image before it's done. And then they get relaxed. It's like, okay, I like it. I like the colors. I like the depth.
The sketching process, the drafting process is very effective and very clear. The more drafts the architects see, the more relaxed they are. They don't want surprises. Architects are routine-based creatures, so they want to be comfortable with the information they get. But I was thinking something else now. Did it ever happen to you that the architect or project leader in the project that you've been in has lost focus on what was important to show on a project, on a competition, and it was very hard to bring them on the right track with the images. For example, sometimes architects use images to show the most they can of a project. And when this happens, it's very difficult to steer the idea of the architect and tell them probably, look, it's better that we do 3 images instead of one that shows the whole project with a 16 millimeters camera. How do you deal with this? Did it ever happen to you?
Yes, it happened. At the end, the architect is a person who is dealing with a stress situation. They have to deliver their project in a short time. And sometimes they cannot get focused in one idea. And in the moment you get to the project, you think, oh, but this doesn't work. I think this image will not show the project as it should be. But this person has been working in the project for a while, and they get this tunnel vision. And to get them out from them is very hard. It's very, very hard. The only way, in my experience, the only way I have to remove this idea from the head of this person is to doing the extra image that I think it works the best. Because until they don't see it, they will not listen to you. And you still will have to do the image they want because they have to see it. It happened in-house and it happened to freelancers. It's the same. It's like how to convince a person that what they want is not actually what they need. It takes a lot of effort and basically you have to do double work.
But I can really tell that you've been freelancing and working for a high-end Archviz firm because this is basically the same way that we use to convince a client of our idea. The extra images, the drafts, it's the same way. And this is very interesting. People that join an architecture office as a first experience as Archviz artists, they miss all this part. And that's probably why I'm not so sure. Well, once I used to recommend people to work in-house for architects as a good starting point for a career in Archviz. But nowadays, I'm not so sure about that because you miss a lot of tricks of the trade, tools of the trade. You miss all this part that is very important. And working in-house as architects, I think, could be the end of a path, When you've gathered a lot of experience that you've built in the years of working on images, and you can actually bring some kind of art direction, some kind of expertise to the office that, nowadays, there are so many architecture offices that are starting to build their own in-house teams, and they all work in a different way. But the most frequent thing that I see is people that they don't have a real background working in Archviz. That's people fresh out from schools, also from Archviz schools, but they don't really have, despite they've been educated as Archviz artists, these schools don't educate people on how to actually work on an Archviz project. What do you think about this? Because that's what I wanted to ask you. Would you recommend that for people starting a career in Archviz? I probably won't anymore. I changed my mind in time.
I think the same as you. For a while, I thought about that. But nowadays, I think to being in-house artist is a very sharp knife. You have to hold it carefully because it can cut you. It can cut you really hard. Let's say if you join as a visual artist to an office, most probably you don't have nobody to ask anything. You don't have any person, you don't have a senior to ask why my 3ds Max is crashing. I have a deadline tomorrow, but I don't know how to set up a pass in Corona. And you're like, or you're seeing in your 3D file, there is an element that is making your file crash. And you don't know, and you don't have nobody to ask. And I think the amount of stress you can get as a person who is new to the business in-house, the amount of stress that you can gather is huge. It's very big. So I think as a starting point, you will be way better if you join to a visualization studio. So you get to learn from professionals and you get to understand how to do the images, but also how to deal with customers, how to deal with architects, all the technical side, how to deal with the programs, how to install, how to uninstall, how to update. It's not easy. I remember times where to update Forest Pack was a risk game. It's like my Forest Pack for today, for tomorrow, stop working. And just because the new update, something mess up, and it's like, oh, I have a deadline tomorrow, all these things, you have to learn with practice. And if you're in-house, basically don't have nobody. Different is that you get For example, at COBE, we have 3 people doing images, and we are 2 seniors. In a way, we work as a visualization studio inside a company, you know? So you have someone to ask. We have an intern. She came to our office with zero knowledge. Before being our intern, she never opened 3ds Max before. Now she's doing images on her own, but it's because we teach her, you know?
Then I have a provoking question for you. If it's so difficult to be an Archviz artist into an architecture office, it's difficult to get the trust of the architects. It's difficult also to grow on the artistic side. Then why would you join an architecture office instead of joining a visualization company? So what makes it worth it?
Because in my case, I love the design process. I really love seeing the project evolve. And I also like to be part of the team from the very beginning. It's not like I have 5 weeks to do the images. Usually I have a very short time to do the images. But I will go to the meetings. I will be involved in all the, let's say, on the design process. I will be there quiet. But sometimes I have an opinion, you know. As a visual artist, maybe, you know, I haven't studied the program of the building. I don't know if they need 30 chairs or I don't know, or 5 rooms. I don't know. But I can tell already by the volumetry, I can tell that this is beautiful or it's not, you know. I know nothing about the projects. I just talk about aesthetics. And this is something that visual artists, we are good at, you know. We can tell right away if a project is going to be nice or bad.
You said something really important here, you know. Not all companies that hire Archviz artists in-house, not all architecture companies treat them the same way. As I was mentioning before, architecture companies have a very broad and diverse idea of Archviz artists. You can have architecture companies that have an internal office, architecture companies like COBE that has a couple of artists and they are very involved in the process. So I think the important thing to tell people here is that not all architecture companies look for the same things in an Archviz artist. So you've been, well, not lucky because you were actually looking for that and you stayed because of that reason, because you were involved in the process. But not all companies, not architecture companies involve their artists in the process. So that's very important to understand, to investigate the company that you want to work at. So I think that's very interesting and something that could be really useful to young artists that want to work for an architecture company. I want to go a step back here, actually, and let's go back to the images that you deliver to the project leaders and to the architects. What do in general people in your office expect from an image?
Oh, the expectations at COBE are high, very high. You know, COBE is a big studio, and when we compete with the best offices of Scandinavia and the best offices, basically, of Europe. In order to be able to win those competitions, we have to deliver the best we can. We're going to be against visualization studios doing high-end visualizations for our competitors. So the expectations are very high. But this is something I learned from my freelance time. As I told you before, I have this mindset of I completely detach from my work and from my circumstances. I just, head down, do the work, and go home. No stress. I don't start thinking about what the others are going to deliver or how my images are worse than them. I do what I can in the time I have. And that's it. They're happy, so it's okay.
Is this something that you learn to do in time? Artists are usually very involved in the process, in the image they do. They have difficulties in detaching themselves from the quality of their work. So I think your case is quite unique. Did you learn to do that, to detach yourself? Was it a process or was it natural to you?
It's something, Federico, I listened to your podcast about the burnout and being like overwhelmed by the work,
Yeah, it was the special episode of the season, the first
exactly.
season.
Federico, I went exactly through the same.
You can't imagine how many people wrote me, not really after the podcast, but after the talk that I did at D2 Online last year in 2021. And there's a lot of people, even big people in the industry, that told me, I've been through the same thing. So it's quite common in the industry. What you reach is quite unique. I think it would be pretty useful to tell people how to reach that kind of Zen mindset,
So in 2018, I even remember the date. In the spring 2018, I reached a point where the things you described in the last podcast, Federico, I was going one by one exactly the same. Like I was listening to your podcast thinking, oh my God, it's totally the same. Many, like you say, many artists in our industry have gone through. And in that moment, I was totally overworked. I was like obsessed with the quality of my work. Obsessed. I wanted to do more, to do better, to do it faster. I got to the point where I stopped seeing my friends. I stopped going out because I just wanted to be as good as possible. And then I understood, okay, this is a no-go. It's important. I cannot live a life like this. This is my profession and I want to be able to do it as long as possible. Then I got also some help. I read some books. And then I get to this, I read this book. It's about how to systemize anything you do, to create systems. And then I started to do my work as a system. For example, I did my library. I ordered really well. Then emails, I systemized the emails. Everything I could, I systemized. So I will save time per day. And one of them was this thing of detachment. Treat your work as a product that you are doing. Of course, I love my work, and sometimes I think this image is my baby. But inside me, I thought, Fran, you do it for a customer. He pay for you to do this image. That's it. And there has to end. Because if I keep thinking about the image and I go back and I try to make it better, I try to improve it for my portfolio, it's like a ping pong, it never finish. And then you multiply this every week because you are producing more images and the amount of work that you have, the extra work that you have to do is exponential. So then I decided, okay, Fran, I want to do this as long as possible as my profession. I want to really live into this because I love it. I know that what I'm going to say is kind of controversial, but this is the way I keep doing it until now. I see myself as a factory. I produce images in a factory way. Now, behind the factory, there is the thinking part, and I progress and I learn about composition, artistic approach.
I think it's controversial when you don't specify those things.
Exactly.
Factory, I think I'll try to formulate this. Factory in the sense that there's a system that helps you producing these images, and the system is backed up by your artistic knowledge and your knowledge of relationship and management of people.
Exactly. It's not a cold factory. It's a factory that behind there is the knowledge and the things that you learn, the more personal part. But I don't let that thing influence my work, Factory in the sense like I get to the office at 9, I start working, and at 5 I leave. And by that day, I have done everything I have to do. I don't start thinking, oh, this is better, it should be better. No. I just do it. It's backed up by the things I have done before. So I have had junior artists helping me sometimes. For example, last year I had one, and I remember this person get to the point where he didn't know how to make the image better. He was like, I don't know what to do in this image to make it better. And I told him, you cannot do nothing. You can change the contrast, the curve, the colors, but the image is the image. The only thing that you can do to make this image better is to jump to the next and keep learning and just do it again. Don't get very attached to one thing. Keep changing and evolving, iterations. And it cannot make you free. It sets you free because then you don't get obsessed with what you do. I do it. It's not me. This is me today. I do. And now it's out there. Somewhere in the universe.
All of this connects to the last question that I wanted to ask you, because believe it or not, we are almost at the end of our conversation. Developing as an Archviz artist in-house, developing and training. This is something that I really experienced in a painful way. I was the only guy doing images for an architecture office, and I had nobody that could train me or explain me things, and I was a newbie in the industry. So how do you keep training? How do you keep developing yourself and your skills when working in-house?
By default, it's difficult. It's very difficult. I remember by my time at Pixelflakes, we had Matthew Reid, who was the art director. He looked to the tutorials and to the stuff that we should learn. So you just sit back and relax. He will find for you what you have to learn. But being in-house, you don't have nobody like that. So all the learning is on you. Also, the architects will not teach you anything. They don't know. Also, the question is when. No? What I do is sometimes in between projects, there is like a buffer, no? Like a few days. So I have a list. Let's say I am writing things that I want to learn, and I look at work of other people. I go through the YouTube or for example, even your podcast, and I just write down what I should learn and what could I improve. And then when I have those buffer days, then I jump into it. And I will be at the office, sitting at the office without produce images, but I will be going through all this information and keep learning. Sometimes I do it at home as well, but just because it's kind of my hobby as well. No, so let's say if I have one evening that I have nothing to do, I will just read or practice something. Also very important, I want to tell this to young artists. At the beginning, you have to build your portfolio. So you will have to do images on your free time of, let's say, conceptual projects that you have designed yourself or you have found on internet. So you have to develop your portfolio in order to have something to show. No? Otherwise, I don't know, how can someone hire you if they cannot see your work? But when you already have a portfolio, I don't recommend doing images on your free time, because then you are overworking. You are doing your work plus an extra job. What I recommend is to do small images or even drafting, and make sure that in every image that you do, you learn something. Either a new plugin or a new technology or a new technique. And about the quality of the images, forget. It's not something that you need to show to anyone. But make sure that the small time that you have free, you use it in a productive way. Because if you do at your home the same you do at your office, it's a matter of time until you get burned out. It's coming. Because you are repeating, and that's what leads you to that hole. But when you keep learning, it's different. You keep evolving, and you keep your motivation up as well. And then all that knowledge that you have gathered, you can throw into your in-house job, no? So you see, it's a process of self-development. It's not that difficult. You have to keep up, but it's not that difficult. And you can continue almost forever, because the software keep evolving and the technology, so it's never ending.
I think it's a matter also of knowing and learning how to schedule your time. Especially in an architecture office, it's quite easy somehow to schedule your time. You have a structure that helps you in scheduling calendars and project sheets and whatsoever. But when you're a freelance, that's the tricky part. That's where you have to learn to schedule your time for research and development and try to carve some extra, bits of time to learn new stuff. But yeah, I think I'm definitely 100% with you on this, especially on the personal project thing. That's something that I'm kind of still debating in a way. Not because I don't agree with you, but I try to consider that some people could be refreshed by doing personal images in their own free time. Not necessarily architecture images, could be something else, still 3D art. But yeah, I get your point. For me, it's the same thing. But honestly, Fran, it's been a great conversation. You told me a lot of very interesting stuff. I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of the best conversations that we had on the podcast.
Thank you very much. I could be talking forever.
I know, I'm pretty sure of that. And there's so many questions that I could ask you. I just want to keep this in a reasonable amount of time for people that are listening to us. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in person anytime soon.
Yes, if you come to Copenhagen to visit any office of architecture or something, because you still do images at the big picture, right?
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll just do a tour of offices. Exactly. Someday. So I don't know.
If you visit Copenhagen, sometimes we get visit from visual artists that are coming to just meet the architects or whatever. If you come, you are more than welcome, and I can show you around. Have a coffee.
I'd be super happy. I've been in Copenhagen once, and it was beautiful. It was when I used to work in Norse and I was ending my internship. I took the end part of my internship to take a trip to Copenhagen for 1 week, and I have fond memories of Copenhagen. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So anytime, Federico.
Thank you for your time, Fran.
Likewise.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting app. If you like this episode, Help us growing and improving the show by rating and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Got a question, or is there something you would like me to cover in a future episode? Write me an email at podcast@bigpicturevisual.com. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.